Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
JamesAllen.com is the online destination to easily design a customized engagement ring and save up to 50% compared to traditional stores. You pick a diamond, whether it's lab-created or earth-created, James Allen has over 200,000 conflict-free stones. Then you pick your ring setting and metal. And if you need some help, they have real-time diamond consultations available, where an expert can walk you through it all. Get 25% off your order at JamesAllen.com, code podcast. That's JamesAllen.com, code podcast.
Welcome to the PowerCat Podcast, GoPowerCat.com's Kansas State Athletics Show. Make sure you're subscribing to our show at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, from the GPC studios, here's your host, GoPowerCat publisher, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the PowerCat Questions podcast. Tim Fitzgerald, Zach Carlson, Cole Carmody, Ryan Gilbert, right here in the GPC studio on the day after the day it all went down at Bramlage Coliseum. I'm sure we will talk a lot about Kansas State beating Kansas in basketball 83-82 on Tuesday night at the Octagon of Doom. We'll talk a lot about Jerome Tang. I'm sure we'll talk about other things. But I know this. K-State beat KU, and the fans chanted obscenities.
They did.
I was kind of okay. But I also support what Jerome Tang's doing. And speaking of which, if you want to get rid of your obscenity chanting, go to the Fridge. The folks at the Fridge will teach you how to be better people like Jerome Tang. They'll help you find the appropriate wine, liquor, or beer, or maybe fruit juice to celebrate victories without chanting obscenities about your opponent. The Fridge Wholesale Liquor right here in the corner of this and that in the town in which we live. It's right around the corner up the street from me and over the dell, not the dale, the farmer in the dell. Anyhow, it's right over there.
A stone's throw.
Right. Hold on, I'll turn around. It's right over there. There you go. Yeah, I was pointing. That's quality podcasting. Let's get going with your questions at Wabash Station. If you've never listened before, boy, has your life been empty. But this is how it works. Everyone who is a subscriber at GoPowerCat.com.
Jeez.
Good Lord. What is going on? Ever since they stopped the chant, I can't talk. Everyone at Wabash Station at GoPowerCat.com gets to ask the questions, and everyone gets to listen to our answers, including the babbling I'm doing right now. And here's your questions from Wabash Station, starting with Cole. Cole looks poised.
I don't think you introduced who was on the podcast.
I did. I absolutely did.
Oh, I guess I wasn't paying attention.
I'm with Cole, but I must not have been paying attention either.
That's the best way to get through this podcast, whether you're on the panel or listening. Don't listen.
Okay.
But I did. Let me do it again. Zach, Cole, Gills, Dude, Daphne, and me, Big Daddy.
The first question comes from KSU number 1. What was the key moment for when you knew K-State was going to beat KU?
When Keontae Johnson tipped the ball up into the air. I've been through it enough to know it's not over till it's over. There was a referee on the court that 2 seconds after the game might have blown his whistle with a foul that involved no touching of the other team. I didn't feel it until it was over. I don't know about you guys, but I just had to see it and had to see them not go to the monitor for some reason to get, it seems like it happens every time with Kansas.
When Grady Dick fell out, I think that was it for me. You have 3 guys that have fouled out who, like I was telling Glenn Kinley in the tunnel while we were waiting for the end of the game. I'm like, if this goes to double overtime, K-State has this game easy. Mm-hmm. And I think they were still behind at the time. But I was like, look, you lost him. You got one guy left who's having a career night, and that's it. You have the rest of your team. You lose Naquan. Maybe you wish Keontae gets called for that foul instead, but he would have picked up 4. So K-State was flirting with a little bit of foul trouble there, but after Grady Dick fouled out, I was like, this is K-State's game.
No offense to any of those guys on KU, but I think every single player that was out on the court for K-State, minus Jalen Wilson, was better for K-State. I mean, KU had guys out there that played 10 to 15, maybe 15 minutes a game. In Pettiford and Clements was on the court. The guy plays 7 minutes a game and averages 2 points. I mean, yeah, KU fans can complain about the referees, and I've seen that. Okay, and I get that.
It's rich.
It's ridiculous, and people want to talk about how Ish might have been out of bounds on that play.
Yeah.
How much time would have been left anyway? That's my question.
Enough for a shot.
Catch and shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's far from a guarantee. For me, the moment I felt like K-State had a very good chance to win was when Bill Self called timeout and completely iced his own offense. Right. That was when I felt like, wow, K-State just got a second wind, and I believe they ended up getting a stop and getting a bucket. That would be been on the alley-oop. So, yeah, it was quite the game. And also KJ Adams, when he fouled out in regulation, I felt that gave K-State a huge advantage because they would have just ran pick and roll with KJ Adams the entire overtime period, and I'm not sure K-State would have been able to stop it. So, yeah, I would say those 2 moments, when KJ Adams fouled out and when Bill Self calls timeout on Jalen Wilson's three-pointer that doesn't end up counting.
Yeah, Fitz, I'm with you. I mean, I know you want more of an answer to this question, but once the final buzzer sounded, I didn't feel confident that K-State was going to win this game. And I know Tang is changing sort of how we're going to view these KU games moving forward. I do believe that, but, you know, I'd seen this story too many times where not only K-State gets a big lead, but KU, not just playing against K-State, KU playing anybody, going down, 14 in the first half for being down by 1 point with 10 seconds left. I don't think you can ever feel confident picking against KU in that spot, right? So until the final buzzer sounded, I didn't feel great about this game.
I don't know. I might say something kind of controversial here, but I feel like K-State is a better overall team than Kansas. I think Kansas has maybe a little better top-end talent. You know, say what we want to say about KJ Adams and Jalen Wilson and Grady Dick, but those 3 guys together are really dang good. And Marquise and Keontae rival that, no doubt about it. But I just think that this K-State team overall has more depth than KU. And on a neutral court, I would be interested to see what the final result would be, because I think they're really close to even. I think K-State matches up with them really well. I mean, guys, if Marquise Noel even comes close to having a normal game, K-State probably runs away with this thing. Now, Desi probably doesn't score 24 points.
Yeah,
but
that's the other side of the coin.
Right, but I think that if Marquise scores 10 points and Desi scores 10 points, just think about how much more Marquise
K-State
is getting
loses the game.
Okay, mathematically, yes. But you understand what I'm saying. I think if Marquise plays his normal game, things look a lot different. So that might be a hot take, but
throw in Gasson. If you get him back in 2 weeks, there's an extra guy you have for a game in Allen Fieldhouse.
I don't want to say that because KU had 3 different guys foul out in this game. I think that evens out not having Gasson.
No, that's fine. I'm just saying
the course of the game, though.
Right?
Course of the game, and if you get him back, that's an extra weapon you have for a future game that they did not have in this one. So
and with Bebe's struggles, I really think they're going to need David back sooner rather than later. Again, he works hard. He's a good kid. He tries hard.
He has his moments.
He does, but the way David Gasson can catch the ball and finish at the rim, I'm not sure Bebe has that in his game right now, and also defensively. I mean, David was really good defensively too. So, yeah, that is my hot take of this podcast.
I got your back on that. This is the first K-State KU game I've covered since that 2008 team, where I felt like K-State was the equal, if not the better team. and more athletic.
Didn't need a miracle to win.
Right. You didn't need a miracle. You didn't need a superhuman performance from a Rodney Magruder or someone else to get this done. You had one of your star players stink it up offensively. You didn't shoot the ball particularly well. You turned it over a little bit too often. And yet you won. And not only that, that final play, the offensive play, the alley-oop, simply was not possible to accomplish that play before Jerome Tang. Number one, Kansas State has a long history of coaches who don't know how to coach the alley-oop. It's been the weirdest thing. This has been the worst ooping team in college basketball. They got more oops than oop. And now suddenly they obviously practice it a lot. They run it well. Marquise runs it well. But what made that play work is your Jimmy and Joe, in this discussion, Keontae Johnson, could jump higher than their Jimmy or Joe. And you know what? That hasn't happened in this rivalry very often. Our former seats down the baseline, you would get a shocking view of how much higher KU players would consistently go for rebounds, on shots, defensively, how much quicker they were, how much bigger they were. None of that was true last night at Bramlage Coliseum. When you stack those two teams next to each other, you can't tell which one is number two and which one wasn't. You just can't. But I'm going to say this. TCU is going to be a problem for Kansas because TCU was a problem with K-State. K-State didn't have the just raw athletes to keep up with TCU. KU won't either. I'm going to be fascinated that they play Saturday and how that comes out because this is the least imposing KU team I've seen in a very long time and only emphasizes what a lot of K-Staters don't want to hear. Bill Self can freaking coach basketball.
Yep.
I don't know how many times out of timeouts they scored. But, K-State's on a run, timeout, here's a play, runs over, we just scored. Over and over and over, he gives his team 4, 6, 8 extra points a game out of a timeout. And over through the years, Kansas State would lose those games, sometimes in Bramlage by 4, 6, or 8 points. Jerome Tang kind of equalized that coming out of timeouts. K-State scores off of inbounds passes now. They come out of huddles better. I just said this on WIW. It's been a long time since a K-State team has consistently came out of huddles better than when they went into the huddle. And that happened throughout the game.
Well, it's almost like you know what the next question is.
I don't.
You led me right into it.
Okay.
This question comes from KNET. Is the story of overtime that Tang coached circles around Self on 3 consecutive timeouts to win?
There's a lot to it. Yeah.
I think this is a great question because you go back and watch the game, and one team definitely looked a little bit more prepared and looked like they knew what the other team was going to do. I don't know if that means he coached circles around Bill Self, Ryan Gilbert, but it definitely was better than what it had been in the past.
Well, Tang obviously deserves a shout-out because he's the head guy of this team, but his whole staff does. And this was Rodney Perry Scout. We talked about this in our group chat earlier, guys. I mean, it's not just Jerome Tang. I hope people realize that he's kind of the figurehead of this team, top to bottom. I know we have a question about the staff later on. Top to bottom, this guy has hired just a tremendous staff. And so, yeah, K-Ned, I would say that was probably the biggest story of this game was just the coaching battle that we saw.
I love Kels Robinette just flat asked Jerome, what did you have the team focus on at the end of regulation and into overtime when KU got a shot off neither time? And he goes, I'm not telling you. I'm not going to tell you. But he did say, just keep him out of the lane. Didn't want him in the lane for an easy bucket. And, again, that goes to scouting, though. They seemed to know exactly what Bill Self was going to do coming out of those timeouts, and it paid off. And
part of it's just taking what the opponent gives you, right? Thanks, Daphne, for that.
That was a dude, I think.
That was you?
That was dude laying down. He was being very dramatic in his lay down.
But it's just taking what you're given, right? And that's what Bill Self does so well. When he calls a timeout, he's saying, okay, this is what they're doing. Here's 2 points for you guys on offense, right? And I think that Tang and his whole staff also did that on the flip side for K-State.
Okay.
I don't think I don't think Bill Self wants Jerome Tang to be the coach at K-State. I know he can sit there and say great things about him, but there's a different tone when he talks about Jerome Tang after that game than when he talked about him at Big 12 Media Days. You can tell he knows that they're going to be fighting for the same recruits, and he's going to be a pain in his ass for years to come.
I'll disagree with that, and I will say that's because Bill Self is a competitor. He's one of the best coaches in the country, and this makes that rivalry with Kansas State that much more fun. KU fans love to hate on Mizzou. That rivalry, sure, has it been brought back this year, whatever, yeah, but I think if K-State and KU can build something special, that's really good for the conference, really good for the rivalry, and really good for Bill Self and KU.
I accept that. Mm-hmm. But I know a lot of KU fans are hoping. They're sending out a lot of energy about Jerome Tang needs to leave.
Oh, he'll be gone after this year.
Yeah. I also know that Bill Self was Bruce Weber's biggest cheerleader when he was here. That is a fact. You can go back and look at those quotes that Bill Self said after that game against K-State, and he was just so complimentary of Bruce. He did not want him to leave.
No, he did not.
There's a lot of coaches that were like that.
And he hated Bruce Weber.
Yeah.
Still hates Bruce Weber. So.
Next question comes from Eric Schneid. Is this the greatest single season coaching display we've ever seen in any sport at K-State?
Season's not over yet.
Yeah. And
give us time
Up to this point. Should I add in up to this point?
Well,
you're asking this question because K-State won one game in the Big 12. They rose up in the standings one game. They didn't win the conference. They didn't win the national championship.
All right, Jerome Tang has said.
That's paraphrasing him.
I know.
The question, wait till the end of the season, really.
I would accept this question if it was not just about basketball. No, I mean, football just won the Big 12 title and went to the Sugar Bowl, and now you got basketball that's going to be back in the
any
top
sport.
10.
Any sport at K-State.
Yeah, any sport.
Well, I know, but I mean, I'm not defining it as individual sports. I'm defining it as a sports season as a whole.
Okay.
I mean,
sure,
it's got to be up there with that 2012 season in which they won a championship in all three major men's sports. 2012-13 season. But this is pretty incredible.
But on a coaching display, have you ever said, you look at the team that just performed as well as they did and said, that's that coach, that's the coaches that took care of that? Because I think that, yes, you can look at what the players did have done this season, but none of that is possible without Jerome Tang. And quite frankly, he gets some of the benefit there by having a whole new team that are his guys. Right. And he gets to say, hey, Marquise was not what he is today if I wasn't here.
Right.
So there's a whole another layer of going beyond his own guys with Marquise and even Ish over the last few games.
It's possible because of the transfer portal. But I would say 93 K-State football, when they finally went to a bowl game, has to be up there. Because, in hindsight, the talent wasn't there yet, but Bill Snyder's staff was doing such an incredible job of building it up. But that had to be done step by step. Now with the transfer portal, 11 guys out, 11 new guys in, let's go. And it's a whole different world.
And it's easier in basketball to put together a solid team through the transfer portal than it is football, simply because there's so many less spots. Now, granted, you have to hit on those spots, but I'm kind of with you, Fitz. I look back at the football season and say, if you were to look at where K-State was after that Tulane loss, now, granted, Tulane won the Cotton Bowl, and I get all that. They were a good team. But to get where K-State finished in football season, from that point on when, everybody and their mother is thinking that K-State isn't going to win more than 3 conference football games.
My mother didn't think that.
Well, your mother's positive. Then, yeah, I think football actually could make a case up to this point. Now, obviously, if K-State basketball goes on and makes it on an NCAA tournament run, then sure, I would agree. But up to this point, I mean, both of these seasons have just been incredible coaching performances, which just highlight how good Chris Kleiman and Jerome Tang are.
The answer to this question is no, and that's because Kansas State has a really good roster. Like, Keontae Johnson's a guy that can go out and score on his own. You give him one-on-one, like, he's going to go out and score 9 times out of 10, right? We've seen that this season. These guys are athletic. They're coachable, obviously. I think Tang is a big part in this, and he's what, makes all the glue fit together. But this is not a result of just good coaching, right? This is good players and good coaching. So Fitz, you're way more well equipped, to answer this, but I'm sure 93 football or whatever was better coaching than this. Like, I look at the NFL Coach of the Year, that's something I followed myself. Like, it's not about how good of a team you have. It's about how maybe poor of a team you have and how good you do with a poor team. Jerome Tang does not have a poor team. And credit him for recruiting these guys and getting them on campus. Coaching them, absolutely sure, but it's not all coaching. Not at all.
Yeah.
You agree?
I agree. They brought in a potential all Big 12 player in Keontae Johnson out of the portal. They've coached Marquise Noel up to the same level. But they're not the only ones. Desi Sills and Cam Carter, was anyone excited about either one of those guys? Like, oh, they could be good players. They're essential players. Ish Massoud's now better. Naquan Tomlin, we thought maybe he could be okay, but he's doing things I didn't think he'd be doing. They're putting him in to defend the post. Is he great at it? No, but he's going to get better and better because he's just going to keep soaking things up. It's remarkable the amount of talent they went out and found.
Next question comes from Contra Cat. Where does this rank as an individual win in the last 11 years of basketball? Those are the 2 conference titles era.
I don't. I'm not good at that.
What's the definition?
I'd still put the win over Kentucky in the Sweet 16 as the biggest win in that period.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
That was going back to the athletic talent. That was such a physical mismatch. It was comical,
especially without Wade.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Again, reminding everyone that Kentucky's point guard at one point was bigger than Kansas State's biggest player on the court.
And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is one of the best young players in the NBA right now.
They were incredible.
Yeah.
Like, nobody watching that game, nobody would have thought he was scoring 30 points a night, though.
No, he's an all-star now.
Yeah.
It's hard because, what do you rank as an individual win being number one? Do you rank it as the hype? Do you rank it as the celebration? Do you rank it as an upset? Do you rank it as a beatdown? Like
the performance, Texas this year on the road, that could be number one.
We don't have the context of it either.
Right.
As Zach pointed out, we don't know where the season's going. If this team tanks, and loses 8 games down the stretch here, well, it didn't mean that much in the big course of things. If this team makes a run at the Big 12 title and, heaven forbid, goes to Allen Fieldhouse and wins, holy crap, we can point to this game and the TCU loss, again, as the point where they got another wake-up call and they got better from it.
I think as far as a KU win, I think it's probably the best one. But
in terms of
excitement,
sure,
what it meant to the program, feeling like you're turning a page, I guess, moving on from Bruce Weber, moving into the Jerome Tang era, kind of a statement win like that. But man, that Texas game, like you mentioned, Fitz, that was an exciting game of basketball from a K-State standpoint. Just watch it. 2 teams scoring more than 100 points in regulation in a college basketball game is insane. I think that's one. I mean, obviously I was there, but that's one that I'm going to remember forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'll remember the KU game forever too, but I mean, just seeing the performance and the way that K-State was able to make shots at Texas is right up there for me.
I think for fans, this will be, as far as KU games go, this will be right up there with the Mike Beasley game. And I just simply because this feels like a rebirth for K-State basketball. And I know Tang will never admit that because he doesn't, and I don't think he knows really. He doesn't understand how important this win is for the fan base. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that, you just beat your rival. It has everything to do with the fact that a team that has beaten you for so many years and consistently beaten you, you come in as a head coach and you beat them on your first try. That's why this is important, because this signifies that Jerome Tang is here and he can do whatever the hell he wants to do because they're going to compete night in and night out. It feels like kind of a rebirth for this basketball program. And the Undertaker meme where he's like laying down, he like gets up. That's kind of like K-State. That's kind of what it felt like to me, anyway.
It's funny because if you ask Jerome Tang this question, he does not give a crap that K-State beat KU. Like he does,
right.
I would say a rivalry, but he just wants to win every game, right? and so he doesn't want to view this as anything more than just a game.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I agree with the Undertaker. I'm not dead yet. That's a Monty Python.
Okay. Last question of the first half comes from Salt Hawk Cat. How bad were the refs on Tuesday night?
Colossally. They were, oh my God.
I like that word.
Colossally?
Yeah.
I think I just made that.
It was Jerry Pollard. Do you have the game notes in front of you?
I do.
It's Jerry Pollard.
Jerry Pollard, who wasn't horrible.
What does horrible mean?
Hey, there's other guys on the court
Is this
there.
right? Brybin? Jarrett? There's a random Byribn, Jarrett, and James Lucky. And look, I didn't really know who James Lucky was.
That was the older guy, right?
Yeah, that was the guy that couldn't keep up with the game and made some mystery calls that nobody could figure out. But apparently he's prominent in the ACC and was like, he did Coach K's last game, and there's a big story about him getting to do that game and how important it was and how cool it was. And I'm like, he's got a little fanboy in him. If he's worried about doing that game, he's got a little fanboy. I didn't like the way he conducted his business at all. He was one of those refs that made a blatantly bad call. Marquise Noel, who I believe is the captain on the court for K-State, said something to him, and he lost his on Marquise. He barked at him. He barked at Tang from across the court, and he went over to Tang and barked at him in his face. And I think Tang referred to it on his postgame radio show about how he wasn't very happy with it. I would like to, and maybe I'll find the time to do it, or more about the motivation, chart every call made in that game.
Good luck. You might run out of ink.
I know. That's the problem. It's going to take so long. I would like to know who called what, when they called it. He called some things, and I'm sure Kansas fans will see some things that he called that were weird against them. There was one foul late in the game where he called Grady Dick for Grady's hand ended up on a shoulder. There was no movement of the player. He just kind of touched him, and he called a foul. It's like, what are you calling here? But, I mean, literally 2 fouls on Keontae Johnson in which Keontae did not touch the other player. I'm not saying, he didn't really bump him. He didn't touch him, and he got 2 fouls. That guy needs to retire. If you can't keep up with the game, because he can't, get the hell off the court.
2 things that I thought were extremely, I don't want to say inappropriate, but unprofessional. And I believe that was the incident you referred to that Tang was talking about. But there was a play that happened at the end of the court, down towards the end of the far end of the court from where we are. And Tang got really mad at a call while the game was going on, and I believe it was this referee. I know it wasn't. I don't think it was Jerry. Got in his face while the play is going on, and there's 2 referees that are on the other end of the court while they're playing, and the referee is walking and barking at Tang.
Yeah.
That is unacceptable. There is no sport where that is okay. Can you imagine in a football game if there's a coach yelling at a side judge, and the side judge turns around and starts barking at him
in the middle of a play?
In the middle of a play? No, that's not going to happen. Same thing with baseball, right? I mean, that was unacceptable. And to me, the worst call of the entire game was when they stopped the fast break when the ball was out of the net because Jalen Wilson got kneed in the thigh or had a cramp, but
I'm actually fine with them blowing the whistle there.
Oh, it was not when there's an imminent scoring threat. That was what was frustrating.
He was injured before they inbounded the ball.
Well, they
should have blown the whistle earlier. Yes, but it was still the right call, I think.
I disagree with that.
But he needs to come off. If they're going to stop the play,
he needs to come out of the game.
He needs to come off.
That was ridiculous that they didn't make him come out of the game.
It's like football. You got a helmet pop off. You're on the sideline.
But he was injured before the ball was inbounded.
So late whistle. How many times did we see that last night?
Yeah.
Well, every team has a coach who works the refs. Dream Dowling's K-State's guy. It's interesting to watch him go about his business. He'll call a ref over and talk to him. I watched this dude consistently walk over to the KU coaches and engage them. What are you doing, man? What? That's not what you do for a job here. It's like I get to hang out with KU coaches over here. Look at me. Look at me. I'm on TV talking to these coaches. Just very strange behavior from a veteran official.
I was surprised Doug Sermons didn't have this game. As much as we like to take massive craps on Doug Sermons, he's kind of the face of the officiating in the Big 12, if that's good or bad. But
Bad.
I was surprised that the Big 12 didn't give him this game, and they didn't maybe try and have a better crew of known officials simply because that this game was on ESPN. It was a big game between two of the best teams in the conference.
Well, I think they'd argue that, first of all, Jerry Pollard's one of their lead officials, which I'd agree with. He was better before he became a lead official and thought he was the show. I thought he did a good job in this game for the most part. I didn't know the other guy who can't spell his first name. But Lucky is a known official. We just don't know him around here. Mm-hmm. People got to understand this. Officials work coast to coast. That's part of my problem with basketball officials. They can be in Pullman, Washington, and then they're in Stillwater, and then they're in Pennsylvania, and they're in Philly doing a game 3 nights in a row. There's no way you're fresh or alert or aware. I don't care if you're a business traveler that has to be awake for meetings, or you got to go ref a college basketball game. So he's well known. He just doesn't do many Big 12 games. So maybe they felt like we're bringing in a high-profile official to work a high-profile game that doesn't have anything, at stake here. But it sure did appear he wanted to hang out with Bill Self and maybe have a beer. Just the whole thing was just very strange.
It's crazy because you look at the first 15 minutes of the game. I thought the officiating was phenomenal.
Right.
I was about to tweet something out and say that the officiating had been so good.
Maybe you should have.
I should have jinxed it. I'm sorry, everyone. But
And then didn't that first ghost call on
it was all downhill from there.
Keontae, and it literally flipped a switch on the whole game.
And
the whole game changed after that.
Fitz, I'm excited for your analysis on the officiating of this game when you go back and look at every call.
You think
I'm excited for that, but
thanks for putting me on blast that I got to do it now.
Stay tuned for a official analysis with Fitz.
Stop.
Do you want to know how lazy I am with that stuff? I went up to one of our competitors last night and asked him to do it because I knew KSU fan would certainly break down the film.
He'll do it. Right?
But yeah, that'll take a long time.
So until that happens, Fitz, I'm going to just say that the officiating was pretty fair on both ends, right? There were calls that we disagree with in terms of K-State's perspective, like Cole outlined. KU fans have probably a lot of reasons to be mad about the Massoud out of bounds on the end of the game, that sort of things. What I had an issue with was just the presence that the officials had in this game. Right. It didn't feel, at the end of the game, it didn't feel like
it sucked.
Oh, wow, who's going to go out and hit the free throw? It didn't feel like, oh, Marquise is going to hit a three-pointer for the win, or Jalen Wilson's going to do this. I was thinking in the back of my mind, okay, which team's going to make more free throws? Because you look at overtime, K-State had one field goal, and of course that was the alley-oop to Johnson from Noel. Every single one of K-State's points outside of that was from the free throw line. Like, that's not how a game should be decided.
Did KU have any field goals in overtime?
I'd have to look.
They did.
But
they did. Okay.
I guess they were consistent with that, being, blowing their whistles on everything, but I would have loved to seen these two teams go at it. I would have loved to seen Grady Dick, McCullough. I would have loved to seen Adams on the floor at the end of the game. I'd love to see Naquan Tomlin, on the court at the end of the game. We didn't get to see that. We got to see everyone shooting free throws.
And at the end of the game, the stats look like they called a really even game. But here's a perfect example of how things changed in the course of the game. I thought during the second half, the way they called dribble drives for KU and K-State were radically different. You reach in against KU, they went to the line, and didn't happen for K-State. However, the overtime, KU scored 3 field goals in the overtime. K-State scored 1. KU was 3 of 3 from the line in overtime. K-State was 9 of 10. So again, the officials made their presence known, and that's probably why KU fans are upset by the officiating because it didn't look good for them in overtime. Listen to these stats. This is incredible. KU hit 26 field goals, K-State 25. KU hit 6 3-pointers, K-State 7. There were 38 rebounds by both teams. K-State was called for 24 fouls. KU was called for 25 fouls. There were 15 turnovers by both teams. Even you get down to some of the fringe stats, points off as turnovers, KU's the first on these. 20 and 17, paint 32-32, second chance 10-8, 10-8. So KU held the advantage in all those. But which program was the established one, and which one went out and found 11 players in the portal or other places to come to K-State? Well, that team outscored KU 31-8 off the bench. Now, I'm the first to say Bill Self is an incredible coach. You can talk about the cheating if you want to, if you think that's what's going on. You can talk about anything you want to. At the end of the day, when the game's on the line, KU's at an advantage because of their coach. But the fact that he got outscored 31-8 in this game from the bench, and he didn't have the depth to withstand some foul outs, doesn't look good for him, because that roster isn't complete. And somehow, some way, K-State beat KU as the deeper team with equal, if not better, talent and athleticism.
KU had 82 points, correct?
Yes.
So that means 4 players scored 74 points because Kevin McCullough, who scored 0.
You are...
Harris had 3 and started.
It was mostly 3 guys.
Yeah.
Jalen Wilson, 38. KJ Adams, 17. Grady Dick, 16. The other numbers, 3, 0, 0, 1, 5, 2.
You know what that sounds like, Fitz? Sounds like a thesis to your project that you're about to do.
Oh, for God's sakes. 3 of us will be back after this break on the Power Cat Questions podcast.
Later.
The other one is going to be going to the fridge to pick me up some treats for the second half. Stay with us. We'll be right back. More talk of the Cats continues on the Power Cat podcast.
GoPowerCat.com's Power Cat podcast continues after this short break.
Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage, to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's here to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 15% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. And sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast.
Welcome back to the Power Cat podcast. Now, let's return to the GPC studios.
Welcome back to the Power Cat Questions podcast, sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. Make sure you stop into the fridge whenever you're in town. I hope you were able to do it on Tuesday to pick up some celebration libations. Ooh, I just made that up. Get your celebration libations at the fridge, because you're going to be celebrating a lot of Wildcat victories in the future with these coaches that are in town. I'm even fired up for volleyball. I think Gene Taylor hit it out of the park with that. We got to see what the results will be, but everything I'm hearing is he's the real deal. So it's fun to cover K-State sports right now, but not as fun as listening to the Power Cat podcast. And here's your questions from Wabash Station.
I'll take it again.
Oh, Cole at the helm. Take it away.
The next question, or should I say first question of the second half, comes from 3G Wildcat. With the first third of conference games complete, what are your expectations for the rest of the season?
National championship.
I feel like we had this exact same question, and you answered that exact same answer last week.
I don't know what to think. I mean, you could look back at this 5-1 start. Yeah, that's a third way through, but they could be 3-3 pretty easily. There are 3 overtime wins in that period. They've won 3. I mean, think about that. They could be 2-4.
And even if they were, though, the back half of the schedule sets up very nicely for this team. I'm just going to say that before we go any further.
Well, they did start with a gauntlet of gauntlets, even by this conference's standards. They're having to run through the 3 Texas schools on the road already, and going 2-1 in those games is remarkable.
Doesn't K-State only have like the 9th hardest schedule in the country at this point?
I bet it's probably the 10th hardest schedule now.
Could be. Yeah. And they got one against KU in the back pocket,
which is it's the easiest Big 12 schedule.
Yeah.
For those of you following along at home, the Big 12 literally is 1 through 10 nationally strength schedule.
Incredible.
You know, Fitz, you mentioned what'd you mention, Fitz?
I don't know.
I was going to say something about what you said.
It was about my brilliance, wasn't it?
It was about overtime games.
Yeah.
Good teams find ways to win those close games, right? And that's like we mentioned earlier.
Again,
Jerome Tang.
Good teams find it. How the hell did he put together a team that is this well defined in late game situations? He invents a new roster with new coaches and is doing things that veteran teams can't do. It's amazing.
K-State, I mean, they're obviously 2-0. I'm flustered, man.
3-0?
I just feel like Fitz is going to demote me after what I said to him in the first half. But obviously there's 2 losses on the schedule, and both of those games were by double digits, right? So not just one-possession games, but single-digit games. K-State is undefeated in those games.
You'll know I'm mad when I stop calling you Gills.
What's my name?
Gills.
Okay. Okay, good.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Let's look at the schedule here, because Texas Tech on Saturday is a must-win.
Oh, yeah.
You're the number 1 team in the conference right now, going against the number 10 team in the conference. There's no excuse for losing that game.
We can go through the whole schedule.
But it's not a lock either. That's what's terrifying about this conference.
Nothing is easy, yeah.
I mean, in this conference, it could come down to a loose ball bouncing off Mark Adams' hair and into the basket, and you lose. I mean, just something like that.
Good thing Shaka Smart's not in the Big 12.
They lose the ball.
In fairness, K-State still gets to play.
Bald? What's he got now?
Shaka has a fro.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. In fairness, K-State still gets to play 2 games against Texas Tech. They get to play 2 games against Oklahoma. Those are games that you need to win. You need to win all 4 of those games.
But you still got to go to West Virginia and Oklahoma State, 2 other teams that are considered at the bottom of the conference, and neither one of those are going to be easy.
And then, yes, I mean, the conference isn't easy, but K-State matches up really well, I think, the rest of the way, because there's going to be teams that beat KU. There's going to be teams that beat TCU. There's going to be teams that beat Iowa State, and there's going to be teams that beat K-State. But that group is going to be the group jockeying for a position. I fully expect this team to be in it until the very end when it comes to the conference race.
Let me put this conference in basketball into a context in which our male listeners can properly grasp. Ladies, just go along with this for a second. Let me get the guys through this. Okay, let's say you're out in Las Vegas, okay, and you're walking through the Bellagio, and emerging from Hyde, my favorite club in Vegas, is a pack of 10 women, all of them gorgeous and dressed to the nines. You know what there is in that group? One of them is the least attractive. That's the Big 12. Stone cold fox is all, but one of them knows that she's not.
But the cheerleader effect makes them look hot.
What's the cheerleader effect?
You put a group of girls together that are either moderately attractive or attractive, and they all look hotter because they're together. But you take them out and separate them.
The pack thing?
Yes.
Yes. That's a good point. And that's the same with the Big 12. You put them all together. It's just, it's sexy.
I thought I was the one that was supposed to make analogies on this podcast.
No, that's been my place for a long time, and I accept you as someone who can do it too.
Fair enough.
Along with Ryan.
Moving forward. Thank you. I really did not appreciate that, but thank you. But moving forward, I'm not going to look at the schedule too much. I don't care what the numbers say. Every game in the Big 12 is tough, and it's what determines if you win or lose is how well you prepare, how well you execute, all those sorts of things. It's not necessarily about who you play, because the top to bottom, the top team to the bottom team, the difference between those teams is it's not nearly as big as it is in any other conference, that's for sure. But it's more about winning one or two plays late in games, and obviously that's what KU did, or I guess K-State did, and K-State didn't do last night. Bill Self mentioned that if you were to give him I think they had 2, 3, 4 plays in the last 5-10 minutes of the game, he'd have been happy with that, where they had the ball in his hands and they had a chance to go score, and they simply didn't execute. Credit K-State's defense for that, but I'm not going to look too much into the schedule. I think an expectation for the end of the season, though, I would say drop one game at home and then go even 500 on the road. I think that's where this team can be and should be.
That's a good way of putting it. Also, they got that game with Florida in the mix coming up here in a few weeks. Florida is right in the middle of the SEC, so that's a game you'd win.
Do they split the SEC up into divisions for basketball or no?
No, they do not. Nope, they are 6th right now in the conference. So literally one spot above the very middle. The next question comes from KSU Todd. He says, what's the most important aspect of the Tang hire? Recruiting connections and knowledge of the league, taking a key piece of the Baylor staff, basketball X's and O's, skill, dynamic personality. He says, I think all are a huge part of making the hire.
No, I agree with that.
It's all the above, really.
I just think we all didn't understand who Jerome Tang was. And usually when that happens, it's a negative. Ron Prince sounded good at the press conference, but you quickly found out that he was a horrible human being. Didn't take long. I don't think any of us appreciated how Jerome Tang just exudes goodness and kindness without being soft. He's demanding. He's a complex individual. He's one of the more fascinating coaches I've covered. And I don't think we fully understood it. So, yeah, you can get into all this, but I think it all goes back to this. Really good coaches wanted to work for Jerome. Really good players now want to play for Jerome. And it all goes back to Jerome and who he is and how he conducts himself and how he treats those around him. You could define him as a player's coach, but I wonder if Ish Massoud or Tyke Green felt that way when they were benched, because he was publicly saying they're not giving us enough. He demands excellence from you, whether it's dribbling, shooting, or in how you conduct yourself interacting with other human beings. It's fascinating, and it all comes back to how he conducts business. I just did Sikkim 365 with my buddies down there in Waco, and they said Scott Drew is even more so, that people think it's fake and it's not. And he and Jerome together were kind of this magnifying force. It all kind of funneled and focused. And I think he's done a good job of going out and finding guys that can be Jerome Tang's Jerome Tang.
There's no sugarcoating, right?
No.
He's very genuine. And this isn't mentioned in the question, but how about his job of uniting the fan base and the energy that Bramwich Coliseum had last night? Mm-hmm. I mean, that was a real difference in the game. You cannot deny that. I really do think it's all the above, but it all starts with recruiting and getting these guys on campus, because if Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel, if these guys aren't here, there's no way that...
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter how good sure, coaching would come into play, but it all started with recruiting, so that would be like the beginning phases of this question. Like, if there's no good recruiting connections, we're not in this position. But it really is just a big combination of everything.
It's who he is. I mean, that's you hit the nail on the head.
There's nothing fake about it. Not one thing about him is fake. It's unbelievable.
I think the key is taking the piece of Baylor staff and taking someone that is intimately familiar with the league. And I'm curious to see where... I mean, if you look at the last hires in the Big 12 Conference, Chris Beard came from Texas Tech. Texas Tech replaced Chris Beard with an assistant. Mm-hmm. Who's the other one? There's another one.
Iowa State, former Iowa State coach. Iowa State assistant, comes back to Iowa State.
That's right.
And TJ Otzelberger. I think that's how you say his name.
Nobody knows.
Tang, obviously. I don't know why I'm thinking. I feel like there's one more, right?
I mean, Bob Huggins, technically.
I guess
It's a long time ago, but
No,
Not
you're,
really.
you're pretty much.
But I think Mike Boynton.
Who's in-
They elevated him. That's who I was thinking of. You have these assistants that were in the league. They were either elevated or came from somewhere else. I think that's just the nature of the Big 12 right now. It's the best conference in the country, and if you want to be the best team in the Big 12, I think you got to look within the conference to find somebody that understands the type of basketball this conference plays.
Don't tell Chris Del Conte that.
I agree with Cole. Don't tell him that. They're not going to hire
No, they
Jerome
won't.
Tang. They're going to go try to hire John Calipari.
And they probably will succeed.
They can't get their ego out of these things.
No.
They just can't.
Next question comes from, I think Jerome Tang would really like this name, Hawk_hater.
Wonder what that means. Was he not like birds?
Doesn't like Atlanta.
Does he feel the same about Falcons and Eagles? Or is it just Hawks?
Probably hates the Falcons, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Maybe he's an Olathe North alum and he hates Olathe East. Should Gene Taylor be working up a contract extension for Tang with
Yes.
raises for staff, or is it too early?
No, it's not. And I'm the guy who says don't give first-year coaches raises that came in and did their job. Nobody could have expected this in reality. I hate it when a coach comes in and goes 6-6 or even 8-4, and they give him a big new contract. Look, he did his job. He did what he's hired. But contending for a conference in their first year, Sonny Dykes deserves a big new contract at TCU, and I would say Jerome Tang deserves one. But at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, if we lose this guy, will we be able to replicate what he's done with another hire? And I think if you fairly look at it, no. You're seeing something absolutely remarkable take place. And not just the wins and losses, but everything going on.
It's sustainable.
It's very sustainable.
That's the thing. Maybe not like winning every single game after game, but with the values that he puts into his program, it makes you believe that K-State is not going to have off years, because not only is he able to bring in these kids, but he's bringing in the kids because of his values, right? He's not a used car salesman. He's genuine in everything that he says. I can only imagine the kind of conversations that take place in the living rooms when this staff goes out on the road, because every single thing that they say, they mean it. And I don't know if you guys remember this or not, and I might have to ask Tang about this, or even Marquise, but I remember seeing a video on social media of Jerome Tang going to New York and meeting with Marquise, and it might have been his brother, I think, and
His family, yeah.
convincing,
great family, yeah.
convincing him to stay. And it's like, you know what? Like, that's the kind of person that he is. He is so genuine with what he says. I think that's why K-State is going to be sustainable. So, yeah, I mean, I think you give him what you say, Jerome, what do we need to keep you here for as long as you want to be here? And I'm not saying blank check. Obviously, it needs to be within reason, but he can turn this university into a different place. He's already doing that with this whole chant thing. So
I think you need to give him the frat house.
Wow. That was a callback.
Hopefully Brad
That was
doesn't want to
good.
come.
Yeah. K-State Athletics does an incredible job with their social media, but they have really, really good young photographers, and they now there's a photo site where we can go as media and download photos. Just hundreds and hundreds of photos from the game. But it finished off with Richard Linton in the locker room celebrating with the team. And it brought back memories of John Weefald doing that with football in the early days, and how important it was that the university president was engaged in the athletic success because he understood what the meaning of that is in terms of marketing and reaching potential students. And it's cool. Even he fits what's going on at K-State. He kind of exudes the same kind of kindness and goodness and kind of that underdog mentality that comes with K-State. So it's pretty cool. They better not. I don't see him leaving. Maybe that's just me. I mean, it's not like at Bob Huggins where his alma mater can call. I don't think Scott Drew's going any place, so he'll go back to Baylor. Even the guys, when I did Sikkim 365, admitted that atmosphere that Jerome Tang saw with his program Tuesday night at Bramlage Coliseum, he never saw once in Waco, Texas. They don't have that. First of all, they don't have a rivalry like KU, but just the nature of their crowd and their limited attendance, they just don't have that kind of energy in the building ever. And, he said it at the press conference. He remembers seeing it from K-State years ago. I don't see him giving that up to go to a Texas or someplace where basketball just isn't very important in the culture.
As a side note, kind of what you said, and it goes back to Monday, what he said in the press conference about, it's just Kansas. We get one win. It's one loss. I think that Jerome Tang kind of discounts Kansas because he sees it. He saw it at Baylor, and I saw this. I went to Oklahoma State my freshman year, if you didn't know, and the KU game.
Traitor.
I came back. Go Pokes.
He's a spy.
I was a spy. The KU game was the biggest game of the year in Stillwater, and Oklahoma State was not very good that year. Keaton Page was on the team. That was about it. They dunked a lot. It was kind of fun to watch, but the arena was mostly empty for most games. KU, decently full. And that's probably what he sees, what Jerome Tang saw at Baylor. Nobody comes to our games, but when KU's in town, that's when everybody shows up. But it's different at K-State. And I don't know where I'm getting out of this point, but I feel like that is kind of the change maybe that Jerome Tang probably saw on Tuesday, finally experiencing it for the first time and saying, hey, I get why it's different now. Because you look at KU, KU's put on a pedestal the last however many years, but now, it's different when it is your true rival.
Right.
I have no clue where I'm trying to get out of this to move on to the next question, but it did spark that thought. But back to the question, though, I think that Gene Taylor just needs to start driving a Brinks truck around town instead of his truck.
I would agree.
Amen.
The last question of the podcast, a little different topic, but it's definitely worthy of Zach picking this question. So thank you, Zach, for picking this question.
You're welcome.
From Jerome Yang. First of all, hope you're doing well, Mr. Yang. Will Skylar Thompson be on an NFL roster next season?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know whose roster, but I can't imagine
he's going to be on the Dolphins roster.
I would agree. I think he's going to be the Dolphins' backup. Mr. Bridgewater will be elsewhere.
Did you see Teddy in that game?
He looked pissed off.
Oh, my God. He didn't even want to be there. He was sitting there with his hood up, and, I
hate to say this, but I'd be pissed too if I was coming into the season the number 2 guy and some rookie from K-State comes in and steals my spot. I mean, a team player should buy into that, but
just take the
inner competitiveness in him should have wanted to be on the field.
Take that game into account. Skylar Thompson practiced all week. That's why they named him the starter. Teddy Bridgewater's been injured, but they're like, we're going to name you the backup because we'd rather have some guy that's practiced all week be the starter versus you, who's the better player, but you've been injured and you didn't get any reps. Mm-hmm. It was kind of ridiculous hearing on the radio on my way back home that was the scenario, that Bridgewater was the backup.
Yeah, and I think he was more of an emergency quarterback than anything. It didn't matter if Skylar played that crap that game. They weren't going to Teddy. No. And you don't even know if he would have been even available if Skylar would have.
I mean, you'd think he would.
Maybe for a play or two, right? You would hope, but I don't know if they had their third quarterback active or not. I don't believe they did, but to me, it just showed that he was a rookie, and too many times do people, when they watch the NFL, expect rookies to come in and immediately make an impact like a Josh Allen did, or like a Patrick Mahomes, like all these elite quarterbacks. Like most guys, it doesn't happen like that. You could go out and say that Skylar Thompson did better than Malik Willis, who was the second quarterback taken in the draft, who got benched with the Titans. So with the amount of terrible quarterback play that goes on in the NFL, yes, Skylar Thompson will be on a roster. I would imagine he'd be the second quarterback, and he'll be one hit away from being the starter, because that is how it has gone with Tua, and he should be. He's earned that. I think he was 50 yards away from winning on the road in a game in which his team was 13-point underdogs and was given zero chance to win. Granted, he didn't have the best game, but his offense did not help him, and neither did his coaching staff.
No, he didn't get the blocking. He didn't get the receiving. Guys, I saw it over and over. Josh Allen's receivers were catching balls, making great catches. And even on the last play of the game, you know what Skyler did? If you want to say, well, he missed wide open Tyreek Hill, you mean as he ran the other direction for his life because his line couldn't block? You mean that receiver that there was no way he could see without turning and getting hit first? He threw the ball to a receiver and hit him in the face with the ball. Not in the hands. He threw it so accurately and low where only the receiver could catch it, and it hit him in the face. That's how incompetent the Dolphins pass catchers, and I use that phrase loosely, how incompetent they were in the course of that game.
It almost felt like they were surprised. Like they were surprised that this dude was actually out there competing with them. Jalen Waddle wasn't expecting Skyler to throw that ball on the money. He was just kind of running his route, looking for the ball. Oh, it's right here. I gotta catch it, I guess. It's like they weren't expecting it. And you know what? I'm sure there's things that go on, but yeah, he's going to be on a roster, and I would be a bad person if I didn't bring this up. But it's impossible to look at what Skyler did and what Brock Purdy is doing in San Francisco. I fully believe this, and I think this was even brought up on one of the talk shows. It's like, well, if Skylar Thompson was in the same San Francisco system that Brock Purdy was in, would he be having the same success? I think you could make an argument.
Yes.
The answer is yes, and
yeah.
I think it's true because
It's a testament to the system that they run.
Yeah, and it shows the amount that coaching can do in that league. I mean, it just does.
If you're a Dolphins fan, you should be wanting the receivers coach to be fired, not because his receivers drop passes, but because of their technique was so awful. So you drop a pass once in a while. But Waddle's out there trying to arm catch it, basket catch it, which you don't do. And the tight end at the end, which I guess is a different coach than the receivers coach, but still, where are your hands? Make your hands available to receive the ball. It was horrible. Horrible top to bottom.
It's such a terrible thing for Skyler. Those are the two guys in Waddle and Hill that combined for the most receiving yards in the history of the NFL from a 1-2 combination. And they just decide, and then, Jalen Waddle just decides not to catch the ball.
Catch the ball, and Hill's off the field, which is so typical of him.
Right.
I ran a lot. I'm going to sit this one out as a key play, but I don't care. Look at the Big 12. Look at how many quarterbacks started those playoff games, or would have started, Patrick Mahomes included, that are in the playoffs as starting quarterbacks. It was pretty impressive. Maybe it's the quarterback league. The SEC might be the defensive lineman league, but I think the Big 12 is a quarterback league.
Chad Henne isn't exactly young. And it wouldn't surprise me if Skyler at some point, being from Kansas City, the Chiefs say, hey, that can be our backup and he'll be happy here.
What you're saying is they're going to draft Deuce Vaughn and bring in Skylar Thompson.
And bench Patrick Mahomes.
Ooh.
That's exactly where I was
bring
going.
in Ben Sinnott next year.
That is
for Kelsey.
This is really a plot twist. I didn't see that coming.
So you're telling me Will Howard's going to be Skylar Thompson's backup again?
It'll be shameful when they cut Patty.
Yeah, just have to get cut. Skylar's
cut $4 million guaranteed,
But then Avery will take his spot when he needs a new contract.
Right.
I'll say this real quick, and I'm sure this will make a lot of people upset. Cole, this will make you upset too. I think it's worth taking a risk on Skylar Thompson, having him at the very least on your practice squad or as a backup. But I have not seen really anything from Thompson to prove to me that he's a starter in the NFL.
No, I'm with you. I don't think he's an every down quarterback, but I said this from the start. I think he is the ideal backup quarterback because Skylar will be prepared. His overall abilities, his arm strength might be limiting to a degree. I mean, he's not going to be able to throw it downfield and let Tyreek run under the ball like Patrick Mahomes or Tua can, but he's going to make the ball available to those guys. And he's going to run the offense, and he's doing that. If his damn coach would send a play in on a time, again, there was a choke job, but it wasn't by the quarterback. It's by the head coach who was in a new position and never experienced that before.
Well, he's a 7th-round draft pick, right? And that's what I'll say to that. I mean, they're not expecting him to come in and be a starter. They're just not. So there's nothing that says he can't develop into a starting quarterback, But we haven't
seen
today
yet.
No.
Like if I'm wearing my Steelers jacket right now, if he went on the field for the Steelers, I'm going to be like, oh boy, I'm rooting for you. Best of luck, man. But, I don't feel good about what's going to go on here because you look at the Buffalo game, they were down 17-0 and, Josh Allen hits Cole Beasley in the chest. We talk about all the drops that the Dolphins had, but that's a pass that goes for an interception, and Skyler takes advantage and scores. And then the sack fumble that Josh Allen had, like, this could have easily just been a blowout. And I respect the Dolphins and Thompson for staying in that game. But I mean, you also go back to the Week 18 game against the Jets. 9 total points, didn't even score a touchdown against a team that was eliminated from the playoffs. It was playing for nothing. So I'm not as optimistic as most are on Skylar Thompson.
Well, all I know is Skylar Thompson covered the spread and the Dolphins covered against the Bills.
But they didn't win the game.
True.
That's why he's on a great team.
Yep.
That's
Anything
it.
else? That was it?
That's it.
That was it?
That was it.
What's my name?
Hour and a half of later or whatever, however long this is.
2 hours later.
1 eternity later.
That's it. We're now off the rails. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate the fridge. We appreciate the questions. I appreciate Zach and Cole a lot. Of course, Ryan's here too.
You'll be hearing from my agent.
Right. Does he say the word poker funny?
No.
Thank you for listening to the Power Cat Podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to our show at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. Power Cat Podcast, all rights reserved, gopowercat.com.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
Hey there, it's Gary Parrish with the Eye on College Basketball Podcast, part of the CBS Sports Podcast Network. We are still in the early weeks of conference play, which means there's no better time to tap in. Every Sunday night and Wednesday and Friday mornings, you can expect an episode in your feed highlighting everything you need to know from the sport of college basketball. Conference races, bracketology, coaching rumors. We'll talk about it all and be there with you at least 3 times a week as March Madness approaches. It's the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. To find us, search for Eye on College Basketball in your podcast app of choice.